Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Here today again with another 6 franchise teams that I think you should probably use for your Madden 23 franchise. If you haven't watched the first video, it'll probably be in one of the annotations or one of the links in the description, something like that, so you can go check that one out, or just click on the channel and go check that one out for the first 6 teams that we mentioned that I think would be good for your Madden 23 franchise. And we're back with another 6 here today, and let's get right into it. Okay, so number 1 here, or number 6 technically, it's going to be the New York Giants. Now the Giants, they haven't made the playoffs since 2016. They've gone through multiple head coaches, multiple different sort of offensive schemes. And I think strangely enough here, this is a year where I think they're going to try to bottom out, if that's even possible to say. Brian Daboll now here in New York. Man that a lot of people give credit for turning around Josh Allen, making sure that he wasn't a bust. And there's some similarities, I would say, maybe with Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, granted minus the rocket arm. I think the mobility of Daniel Jones is something that is really interesting to use. I did use it for my second Madden 22 franchise, the Giants one, and I found his mobility to be a really nice tool. Now, the issue here with Daniel Jones is that he's not that high of an overall, probably coming into Madden 23. He's probably going to have normal dev, and you're going to have to decide to pay him an extension because his 5th-year option was declined. So, likely already has a foot out the door here in New York. I do think the Giants nailed the draft, though. You're going to have 2, I think, really nice pieces here with edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeau, who a lot of people early on, really all, I don't want to say all, but, you know, coming into last college season, he was projected to be the number 1 overall pick before another player on this list sort of took that. And then Evan Neal, who I think is going to be a great tackle for them. So you do have those 2 pieces to sort of begin your rebuild with. Team, like I said, it's going to need a quarterback. It's probably not going to be Daniel Jones, and this is going to be the first time, but of many times I'm going to mention this sort of thing that you could do in your franchise. The first route you could take is you could maybe try to make it work Daniel Jones, but, you know, I don't think that'll happen. I don't think that's the best thing to do. Save your cap room, try to use a younger quarterback. So, the other 2 options here, use an auto-generated class and maybe try to find a quarterback through there, give your franchise something a little bit unique of the auto-generated players. I always think that's a lot of fun to do in franchises, sort of create those stories in your franchise that are unique to your franchise, which I think is a lot of fun. Or you could use a custom draft class that will eventually get made probably a few weeks before the start of the actual, maybe after the start of the actual NFL season, and, you know, try to tank for either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I think either way, this team still needs a lot of work to do, but I think it has some interesting pieces in place to sort of as a good baseline to get you started. So unlike this next team per se, and the next team here is going to be number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I normally try to avoid these sorts of teams with the high profile quarterbacks, but the Jaguars still have a lot of holes on this team, and before this team can really even, I think, be a playoff contender. And that's, you know, that's after they gave $72 million to Christian Kirk. They drafted Trayvon Walker, who after the combine really flew up a lot of people's draft boards. Despite being the number 1 overall pick, Walker is still viewed as a very raw edge prospect. I don't believe he did a lot of edge rushing at Georgia. Now, granted, that's because Georgia just had some absolute dogs on their squad defensively, so they didn't really need him to be that sort of guy. But, you know, the thing with Walker is that he is likely going to end up being, I think there's a very good chance he could end up being one of the lowest rated number 1 overall picks in the history of Madden when the game actually comes out. Unless they really juice him up, you know, I don't see this guy being anything more than maybe a 73, 72 overall. He probably will have superstar development. So, you know, he should progress as you go throughout your first season. But yeah, I mean, he's likely not going to be very highly rated when the game starts. So once again, a player that you have to build up that could, if he achieves his potential, I mean, this guy could be like the next Myles Garrett. The physical traits with him are probably off the charts. Great athlete. Hopefully he turns into a good football player. So hopefully we see that. Or hopefully you see that. O-line needs some more depth. The interior of the line, I think, is kind of weak. You do have Walker Little on this team, so you might start him at guard. Tackle spots are kind of filled up right now. So, I think, this is something that you should really always look for in Madden is, for these teams where if you have a backup tackle on a team that doesn't necessarily have great guards, the way the Madden ratings work, it's not like that difficult to sort of take one of those players and sort of throw him in at guard. It's not that out there, I would say. So I think start him at guard. Then you have the running attack with Travis Etienne, James Robinson in the run game. I think that'll be pretty nice. But once again, really the defense and secondary just isn't that good yet. So that's where I think you're going to be spending a lot of your time, not only scouting, but also maybe signing free agents, trying to get that secondary right. So I think that's something you're probably going to be doing a lot for this Jaguars team. Maybe trying to find some, stud receivers possibly as well. I mean, maybe you want to trade some picks for some players as well. Maybe get like a DK Metcalf, something like that on here. I think that's a direction I would go with this team. And then Trevor Lawrence. He showed a lot of flashes his rookie season, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, which I think is normal for most rookies. And not every rookie is in a situation, I would say, like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. That's not the norm. That's not the average of how young quarterbacks start in the league. I think we've sort of been spoiled here with guys like Mahomes and Burrow and Herbert. With Lawrence, it'll be interesting to see sort of how he's rated in Madden 23. He should still have a pretty decent dev trait. Doubt it will be superstar, probably be star, but it's not too hard to get quarterback dev traits up. So Jaguars going to slot in here at the 5 spot. Now the next team here, we're going to stay in the AFC South. And it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts here coming in here at this 4 slot. Now this is kind of a different team, I think, from these previous two, where they're not just going to be completely awful, I think, right? They're not going to just be these really bad teams, not going to be competing, in real life for Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, or in Madden for whatever auto-generated quarterback out of whatever college, you know what I mean? They always auto-generate those guys at like the same 3 colleges, but the Indianapolis Colts, they are at the very least, I think, a playoff contender on this list, right? I think out of all of these teams on this list, the Colts, you would probably be not surprised if they made the playoffs. But are they a Super Bowl contender? I don't really think so. There's still there's still a lot of room for this team to grow, I think. And, they did trade for Matt Ryan, but one of the things you have to remember, Matt Ryan, he's up there in age. And in Madden, there is regression. He will regress after that first season. So you're probably not going to have multiple seasons of Matt Ryan playing at a decent level, because he's going to get hit with regression really hard after that first season. So you'll be looking to replace him, I think, early on in your franchise. I think this is where, in that first year, you're probably going to really want to scout quarterbacks with, where you're going to want your focus to be. You're going to want to focus on whatever region has the most quarterbacks and really try to maybe find one, sort of be the future of this team. Because you're going to need that quarterback sooner than later, and you're just not going to keep trading for these older quarterbacks that just aren't ever going to get you over the hump. The defense, I think, is maybe one of the bright spots on this. It's really, I think, the better spot on this team. You do have Jonathan Taylor, so he should be a lot of fun to use in Madden. Those types of, I would say, really beastly running backs are always fun to use in Madden, and I don't think Jonathan Taylor is any different. You have Kwity Paye, was a first-round pick last year, if I'm correct. You can try to, he still needs to be developed for sure. You have Yannick Ngakoue, you have DeForest Buckner, you have Darius Leonard, you have Stephon Gilmore, but some of these guys are a little bit older. So they're also going to start regressing, and you're going to have to replace them as well. So, this could be a a team where maybe you make the playoffs and then the next season it's like, oh, this team's a lot worse. I have to, I think the real rebuild starts maybe the second season of your franchise. So I think that's kind of an interesting team to put on here. I think offensively, I still think they're missing pieces in that wide receiver room. I don't think it's necessarily that good. Like I said, this team should compete for the playoffs. They should win the AFC South, but I think they're far from a Super Bowl contender. So that's why I think that's what kind of makes them an interesting franchise team for you to pick in Madden 23. And for number 3, we're going to go up to the north again, way up north. And number 3 here is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. That's right. On these lists, I have listed now, between 2 of them, 3 of the NFC North teams, that is excluding the Green Bay Packers. And I think there's very good reason here. The Vikings, they went 8-9 last season. The Vikings pretty much have the same roster as last season. Also have a few additions like former Green Bay Packers Adarius Smith and Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth Jr., who gave that secondary, are going to give that secondary, some much needed youth. They actually really need that on that secondary. I do like both of those picks, so those are going to be 2 interesting pieces for you to have moving forward. But at quarterback, you have Kirk Cousins, who will be, at the end of his contract, will be 35, which means he's in that range of where he's going to start regressing a lot by the time that contract's over. At the end of Madden 22, he was already an 81 overall. He was already down that much. So I wouldn't be shocked if, after the first season, he's down to maybe like a 77, 76 overall. So really at that point, you'll probably be looking to maybe trade him, maybe get rid of him, maybe use Kellen Mond, or probably draft a quarterback. It really all depends on, I think, how things go for that first season. If you're like a beastly Madden player, you can probably take any of these teams. If you're one of the guys that comments in my video about how you could beat me one-on-one, you can probably take any of these teams and go and win a Super Bowl. But if you're someone that's like, doesn't really want to cheese the game, things like that, you might have problems with this team. I think trying to make the Super Bowl that first year. You do have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook. Those are great pieces on offense. The offensive line still needs work, I think. And when it comes to the defense, a lot of the key players are on the wrong side of 30. So you're going to have to start replacing those guys now. You're going to have to start looking to replace those guys. Even some older players on the offense. You have older veterans like Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen. Maybe those are guys that you potentially look at trading simply to get some more draft capital to start retooling that defense even more. So I think that's kind of what makes the Vikings interesting possibility here for Madden 23 franchise teams. So we are now going to go to our nation's capital here for number 2 on this list. And that's going to be the Washington Commanders, or Commies. What an awful name. So not only do you get to use a team with a brand new name and new uniforms, which I think is always a lot of fun. Those teams are always really popular to use for franchise, just because you have fresh threads. You have a really bad quarterback situation here. For being honest, Carson Wentz, that MVP-like season he had was probably an anomaly. I used a tough word right there. And not only that, he's often injured. Now, I've played a lot of Madden franchise the past few years, and I also had, I believe, Madden 20? Either Madden 20 or Madden 21. I haven't seen a quarterback injury in a long time, so maybe that's not going to be too much of an issue for you. But he's probably not going to regain his MVP form. And even if he does in real life, it won't really matter in Madden 23. It won't matter in the game. His overall rating at the end of Madden 22 was a 73 overall, and he's already 29. So whatever gains you possibly make on that first year, he's just going to lose it the next year because he's going to be 30, and once again, regression will start kicking in. We know that quarterback regression. Even in the beta, I noticed that quarterback regression was still a thing. So that's something you're going to have to look at, honestly. And then you take a look here at this quarterback room. Taylor Heineke, he isn't much better at the end of Madden 22. He was a 69 overall. Nice. But, that's not going to be good, and he's probably just not going to regress quick enough to be a very good quarterback for you. Sam Howell was a 5th round pick. I do like Sam Howell. He's kind of like mini Baker Mayfield. I know that's the common sort of comp on him, but he was a 5th round pick. And so I wouldn't really expect him to have that high of a rating. He probably wouldn't have a dev trait higher than normal when Madden 23 launches. But honestly, it might make sense for you just to start Howell. Try to put up some numbers with him. You're going to have Terry McLaurin. You drafted Jahan Dotson. You also have Brian Robinson Jr. on this team. So there's some interesting offensive pieces. So maybe just try to put up some numbers with Howell. See if you can maybe win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Maybe get a bunch of boosts. Maybe get that dev trait boost and all the upgrades that come with it. And maybe you can turn Howell into your franchise quarterback at a really cheap price. You'll be saving a lot of money on the cap with him. And then you can go out and really fix up this secondary most likely. Defensive line and the edge players, I think, are really good here. I mean, honestly, if you put like an Aaron Rodgers on this Commanders team, you take a look at the receiver, take a look at this sort of defensive line, the edge players, you'd almost be going, wow, this team can maybe compete for a Super Bowl. But you don't have Aaron Rodgers. You have Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, and Sam Howell. Maybe one of those guys is the answer, but probably not to win a Super Bowl and probably not to compete for the playoffs. You got Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Those guys are good, relatively young, either in or entering their prime. So I think that's a real bright spot here on this team for you moving forward. The Commanders definitely can still need a few pieces in the secondary. Maybe your quarterback of the future is on this roster. Maybe it's not. But I think at the very least, for at least some fun, and it's always fun to use the new rookie quarterbacks, for the very least, for your first season, if you pick this team in Madden 23, I think you should start Sam Howell, have a little bit of fun, and see if you can turn him into something for your franchise team. Which means that leaves us with only one more team, and let's get into it. So number 1 on this list is going to be the New York Jets. That means both of the New York, but not New York, actually Jersey, but they say New York teams are on this list. We started off with the New York Giants, and we're going to end with the Jets on this one. It's year 2 of the Zach Wilson era, and they've added some nice pieces, I think, for the second-year quarterback. You're going to have Garrett Wilson on here. You already have Elijah Moore. You're going to have Breece Hall, who a lot of people thought was the best running back in this past draft. So you're going to have, I think, some fun offensive players to use. This team also added Jermaine Johnson and Sauce Gardner. So you do get some nice defensive help too as well. So you kind of have almost everything in place. I think it's about just filling out the rest of this team. Zach Wilson at the end of Madden 22 was rated as 72 overall, but once again, that's not too much of a problem. He should be rated pretty similarly in Madden 23 when it drops. Probably will have star development trait, might have normal, but once again, it shouldn't be too hard to for you to get him that dev trait upgrade. The offensive line, I think, looks pretty nice as well. Nice mix of veterans, nice mix of young guys. And I know I've talked about regression a little bit here and things you have to look for. Offensive line is still, I think, one of the positions where it sort of just feels like regression doesn't seem to hit as hard. So they have players, veterans like Laken Thompson, George Font, who are a little bit older, either just turned 30 or about to turn 30. They should hold up pretty well because offensive linemen, they kind of just don't really regress that much in Madden. I'm not really sure I don't think they fixed it. The few sims I did of the Madden 23 beta, I just didn't notice a lot of regression from offensive linemen. So it's not something you're gonna have to really worry about. Defensively, I think you have a good edge group here. You have Carl Lawson, if he stays healthy, for you. That should be good. I don't know what his injury rating is going to be. Maybe you won't play with injuries, but I think you should play with injuries just to add a little bit of flavor to your franchise. John Franklin Myers, if he can continue to develop into a nice edge player, I think you have a really nice secondary edge guy. And then first round pick, Jermaine Johnson, has a lot of potential. Once again, another guy should have star development, so it shouldn't be too hard to develop him into a very good player, I don't think. So you're going to be able to get some pressure, hopefully, for you. You know, it is Madden, so sometimes you don't get the pressure that you think you should be getting, but I think you have players that can get those sort of just shed blocks and be able to get after the quarterback off it enough that they should get some good development boosts and things like that. Secondary, decent enough, I think. It's okay. It's not great. Sauce Gardner is a guy that he should probably have superstar dev when this game launches. So I don't think you'll have a problem developing him whatsoever as you move forward into your move on with this team. I think you just, once again, it's about filling out the rest of the depth of this team. So a lot of young players, which means you should have a lot of cap space to do so, and you probably won't be making the playoffs at all, so you'll still have some pretty high draft picks. Once again, if you use an actual draft class or one of the random generated draft class, probably gonna want to still look for some extra corners, maybe some extra linebackers and things like that. Maybe another receiver just to have sort of a third guy. You know, I don't think Denzel Mims is that much of a going to be a key contributor for you. So could be a guy you can maybe trade for some draft capital a little bit too as well. So I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do with the Jets on how you want to build that team up. So with the Jets team, you already have, I think, a lot of your key pillars in place. It's just about what you build on top of that foundation. So that's why I have the Jets here at number 1 on our top 6 teams to use for Madden 23 franchise, or our second part of this list. All in all, we've done 12, so pretty nice so far, I think. And so that's going to do it here. I'm going to get out of here. I've spent 20 minutes talking about teams you could use for your virtual franchise mode in Madden 23. I hope you guys liked the video. Like I said, you know, I like doing these ones. I know uploads have slowed down a little bit, but like I said, you know, sorry for not continuing the Madden 22 Giants franchise, but once again, we already won the Super Bowl in it, and, you know, it seems like people just weren't interested in watching that, and yeah, so that's kind of how things are, you know. You kind of have to upload what people are interested in watching, and there hasn't been too much more Madden 23 news, really, right now, so that's kind of why I'm kind of in a holding pattern until the game comes out, which means we're about a month away from that. And I do have something to say here in this video. I have decided on a Madden 23 franchise team. Out of these 2 lists, that team it's one of these teams, and I'm not sure when I'm going to reveal that team, but I will say a recent trade that just happened definitely sort of locked in where I'm going to be going with Madden 23 on this channel, so be on the lookout for that. So if you'd like this video, if it helped you maybe decide on a team you want to use for Madden 23 franchise, maybe it didn't, maybe I didn't convince you of anything, but if I did give you some ideas on for what you should do for your Madden 23 franchise, and if you appreciated that at all, no problem, you're welcome. I'm glad I could help. I sounded so egotistical, but yeah, I'm glad if I helped. Cool, I'm glad I can do that. I hope to give you guys some ideas on what you should do for when you get Madden 23. So if you like this video, be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe for more. Madden 23 is just around the corner. We're going to be uploading franchise on here. So if you want to see that, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification to be notified of when all that stuff starts to go out. When Madden 23 gets here, it's moving very quickly, you know. It's already July, guys, so Madden 23 just around the corner. So I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe, go follow me on the Twitter, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.